Chapter 8. Abril. The cold banister that warmed under Mum's hand as she clasped it might one day recall the event, and when flesh and bone no longer sit on a chair in hazy February sunshine, it's possible that our home will remember these things, and for a moment the people who made them will return. A march into April. The landscape changes, and bare brown vines, which had stood guard around fields of weeds a few weeks ago, or had been naked sentinels along roads, now begin to retrieve some of their modesty, covering themselves with vibrant shades of green. The heat and clarity of the sun, once it climbs into the sky, means the mechanical donkeys are heard passing our gates in early morning or in late evening, when the heat is less aggressive. They plough weeds and old vegetables into the earth, and when the heavy wheels roll away, boulder like clumps of soil are strewn across the fields. But a little time afterwards, the tractors return and transform this rough landscape into one of smoothness. The West Wing. As the days of March warmed and joined seamlessly with those of April, we opened our doors again, this time to receive delegates from Stephen's half of the family, the West Wing. From Bristol, flights to Portugal arrive in Lisbon, and Stephen's mum and dad paid for us to hire a car and meet them at the airport. It had been just over a year since we had been in the country's capital city, so our plan was to proceed past the airport and into the centre of Lisbon to have something to eat. There is a saying, the best laid plans of mice and men go astray, and this was something that often applied to my plans, although, to be honest, they were not always best laid. On a cloudy afternoon, we drove to Coimbra to collect the hire car, and we were greeted at the reception desk by two smiling faces. As usual, we spoke our best Portuguese, and as usual, the conversation proceeded in a mixture of that language and in English, which one of the helpful, friendly young women spoke very well. Our car was left on a quiet city street, and in a larger vehicle we joined the motorway to Lisbon. March had been a wet month, which, judging by our neighbours' comments on the matter, was normal for early spring. So when a little into our drive it started to rain, we were only disappointed in as far as it affected our family's arrival. Living in London up until recently had conditioned us to traffic, but since driving here, we had come to appreciate unclogged roads, even in Coimbra. So as we neared Lisbon and deceleration replaced acceleration, the hours disappeared, and spending time in the city centre seemed less likely. There remained time to eat if we did not deviate from our route too much. So we proceeded a little past the airport and exited the motorway at the next junction. We began following signs to a town where we hoped we would be able to have a meal that was not at airport prices. And 10 or 15 minutes more driving delivered us to a town where the dark, wet evening heightened a sense of deprivation. There were shabby shops, dirty streets, beggars, and a notable immigrant population which contrasted sharply in my mind with the Lisbon I had previously seen. Yet it's probably the price many areas surrounding cities pay for the clean marble and glinting gold that attract tourists and money to their hearts. Having parked the car outside a supermarket, the size of which did not truly justify the prefix of the word, we went into and brought some bread, milk, a bottle of red wine, and a bottle of port, which Stephen's sister Christine liked to drink mixed with lemonade. There were police on the streets, which added to the uneasy feeling we were developing. So, with a slight reticence, we took our jackets from the boot of the car, put them on, and withdrew the umbrella before Stephen locked up and we walked away. The large glass frontage of a pasteleria permitted us a glimpse of hot food and cakes for sale, and on such a night the environment inside appealed to us. The dinner was not the one we had visualised, but my piece of something which resembled shepherd's pie satisfied my hunger, while Stephen's buttered roll and a cold drink sufficed. To pass another hour, we walked for a while and came across the remains of an aqueduct far above our heads, a structure which even on that night, in that place and its crumbling state, impressed us. The road layout on our journey out of town confused us, and when the motorway loomed in front of us once more, we managed to be on the wrong side of it. Denser traffic and familiar landmarks informed us that we were entering the centre of Lisbon after all, and the fear that we would not be at the airport in time to greet our visitors began to take hold. Luckily, Stephen has a great sense of direction, which more than substitutes for my lack of such. When we crossed tram lines, circled roundabouts, and merged with traffic lanes to manoeuvre ourselves onto the motorway, airport bound once more. There was a waiting car, a waiting son, and me in place when the West Wing emerged into the arrivals lounge, looking exhausted. Mum, Dad, and Christine stayed with us for 10 days, during which time we went out every day. Our trips involved coffee, cake, and toast in Miranda de Corval every morning, and there was a visit to Figueira de Foz on a hot, sunny afternoon. At the seaside resort, Christine, Steve, and I went down to the beach, while Mum and Dad sat outside a cafe. The days became warmer, and we shed our jumpers, put away the blankets that had covered our legs on cool evenings, and sitting in front of a roaring fire was replaced by sitting outside once more in t-shirts and shorts. Mum and Dad seemed to come more alive during their stay with us. Dad walked with a brisk step that was absent when we met him in Lisbon, and Mum's failing eyesight and poor balance appeared less of a hindrance to her. However, I do remember one occasion as I walked down the inside steps to the winter room with my mother-in-law on my arm. "If I'm lucky enough to reach your age, I may want help making my way down these stairs one day," I said. "Well," she replied, "I'll be looking down at you and saying, now you know what it feels like." The cold banister that warmed under Mum's hand, as she clasped the iron on her left side and me on the other, might one day recall the event, when flesh and bone no longer sit on a chair in hazy February sunshine, and when muscle and air no longer produce the sound of laughter. It is possible that our home will remember these things, and for a moment the people who made them will return. And the life that isn't always fair, and where the people we love cannot always be with us, it is important that we can say we've done our best, and that will be fair enough. Connections. In April, we knew that the time had arrived to do something about our spaghetti-like fuse box in the dining area, and the electricity meter that still sat on the floor in the corner of our bedroom. The courage that we needed to call the phone number we had been given back in December, the one the man from EDP had given us, had not shown itself, and the piece of paper remained on the work surface as a reminder of this. To be fair on us, we had tried different approaches to contacting an electrician during this time, and the builder from the UK, who had an office in the house by the front, said that... Let me read that again, it makes no sense. To be fair on us, we had tried different approaches to contacting an electrician during this time, and the builder from the UK, who had an office in the house by the front, said that he would pass our phone number on to someone who often did work for him. But there was no follow-up to this. That still didn't make sense to me. And the builder from the UK who had an office in the house by the... Oh, sorry. Okay, I'll read it again. It makes sense now. To be fair on us, we had tried different approaches to contacting an electrician during this time, and the builder from the UK, who had an office in the house by the font, said that he would pass our phone number on to someone who often did work for him. But there was no follow-up to this. Another idea had been to ask Isabel at her kiosk if she knew anyone, but that was one of the rare times she was unable to help. Then Stephen suggested asking Julia, the owner of the cafe on the edge of Place José Falcão, feeling certain that she would probably have calls for an electrician at one time or another. Stephen and I went into town, bought a couple of milky coffees in the cafe, and asked Julia if she could recommend anyone to us. We were more than a little surprised when she picked up her phone and dialed the number there and then. The person she spoke to must have asked about us, because we heard the reply that we were English, but more or less spoke Portuguese, and the comment made us feel very good about ourselves. The phone conversation was short, and expecting to be told someone would phone us a while later, we got a second surprise when instead we were told that the electrician would meet us where we were in a few minutes. When Miguel arrived, we gave him a brief description of what we wanted done, and after asking us for our address, a time was agreed that evening at which he would visit us to assess the situation. From dealings we had with the shop where we had bought our wood burner and water heater, we were more than half expecting nobody to arrive later that day. But with Miguel's arrival at the given time, we began to believe that bad timekeeping and broken appointments were labels unfairly attributed to all Portuguese people. Over the next couple of weeks, our electricity supply was made safe. The jumble of wires was tidied up, appropriate fuses and amps installed, and everything was set for the meter to be transferred to the prepared compartment in the wall outside the gate. It was not until the latter half of May that the electricity meter reached its new position, and 2 visits previous to this were made by the electricity company. One by a team that checked how electricians work, and another from a team that did something to the cables further afield. During the electrician's visit, we had managed to converse sufficiently in Portuguese and told him that we were serious about improving the rudimentary language that we had learnt up until then. Miguel put us in touch with Cristina, a teacher in Miranda de Córdoba who helped his daughter with English, but who also taught Portuguese to foreigners. Not Ruth's sister. Back in February, when Kim and Chris had been staying with us, a misunderstanding Stephen and I had concerning the name of Lourdes had been cleared up, and we were introduced to her sister, or so we had thought. On the sunny Easter Sunday, Stephen and I decided to go to the church in Villanova for the service. We are not religious, but we do have a sense of tradition and we appreciate architecture, so we were interested to see inside the church from those perspectives. Attending the Easter service was something we had discussed on a few occasions before the actual day. Although I was more enthusiastic than Stephen was, I was apprehensive about what would occur. There were few people around the church when we arrived, so we walked along the streets near it for a while, before sitting down on the wall, a place where we had often seen men sitting while the regular Sunday services were attended by wives, mothers and children. The area remained quiet for some time, until a car parked alongside the road below the church, and what looked to be a young family emerged from it. Mum, Dad and 2 boys aged between 5 and 10. Before this family had time to climb the steps between the road and the church grounds, another car arrived at the same time as 2 women left the church through a door in the side and walked to where the main entrance was. Following this activity, cars arrived one after the other, and the drivers were forced to park further and further along the road. sometimes dropping off the passengers by the church, where they waited until the drivers reappeared a few minutes later on foot. The approach to the church and its grounds became filled with the noise and the milling about of 100 or more people, greeting each other briefly or stopping for longer conversations, while smartly dressed youngsters ran around. Something Stephen and I noticed was that teenagers were vastly outnumbered by the younger and older generations. I recall no bells ringing the hour or signalling the start of the service, but as if a sign had been given, people began to file into the church. Where the bustle and the sense of excitement had been only minutes before, there was now space filled by the muffled sounds which escaped from the church within, and the wind in the leaves and trees which shaded the stone bench beneath where. Okay, I'll just read that part again as well. Where bustle and the sense of excitement had been only minutes before, there was now space filled by the muffled sounds which escaped from within the church walls, and the wind and the leaves of trees which shaded the stone bench where we sat. Steve and I had held back when the crowd moved, but by that time we were in a position ourselves in front of the main doors of the building to allow us the opportunity of observing people entering in the hope of discovering what, if any, ritual was performed. Something which we would be expected to follow. However, a naivety as far as the Catholic Church was concerned remained, because the stout wooden doors which greeted the world when the church was shut only allowed us to view into a large vestibule once they were open. And here 2 more doors, which more ornate, led off to the left and the right, shielding the inner church from us. Whilst we sat watching new arrivals enter, we saw the woman who had been with Lourdes at the chapel, and although we nodded in her direction, we were not sure she had seen us, because no acknowledgement was returned. A time came when we raised ourselves from the wall, walked into the vestibule and pushed the right-hand door open, but being greeted by the sight of white-frocked altar boys was enough to intimidate us, and we retreated to the safety of the wall once more. Stephen asked me if I still wished to attend the service, but whatever curiosity I had was outweighed by the fear of the unknown, so we went home. We saw Lourdes a few days after our abandoned Easter service, and told her that we had seen her sister while we had waited outside the church. She had a quizzical expression on her face as we were asked how we knew it was her sister, and Stephen's reply was that he remembered her from the introduction at the chapel, and this added an air of few amusement to our neighbour's features. The subject changed, and over the year we saw more and more of the woman we started to call not Ruth's sister. So named because Lourdes was not Ruth, and time revealed that the other lady was not her sister. However, to confuse matters even more, the woman that we believed was a sibling of not Ruth did have a sister who happened to be an identical twin. But as we were unsure of which twin was which, we found it easier to refer to them both as not Ruth's sister.